Hello and welcome to this video and another book review. Please excuse my appearance, I'm not sleeping very well, so I'm a bit run down. I'm getting to sleep and I'm sleeping long enough, it's just very bitty and very restless and I'm feeling very tired at the moment. But enough about that, let's get on with the book review. So like last month, I'm still finding it quite hard to concentrate on reading and finding stuff that's actually holding my attention for long enough. But I did still read 3 books this month, so can't have been that bad. So the first book I read was The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. I think Stein. I'm going with Stein. Garth Stein. And as you all know, I do like a dog book. It's something, well, obviously I can relate because of Jeff. Books from a dog's perspective are even better, so that's what this one is. It does make me think of Jeff a lot, and particularly this dog is quite a philosophical dog, it's how I imagine Jeff to be. And a lot of it is a flashback, so the beginning, the dog feels like it's time to go, and the first chapter is basically the dog coming to its own mind, thinking of, reasons why it should leave and how it will free the human to do extra things and more things. It was just very sweet. So the book is a strange one. So I really liked, obviously, the bits with the dog and what the dog was thinking. There were bits that made me laugh a lot. For example, they went for a walk in the woods, and it's a woods that he'd never been to before, and he was like, he was so happy that if he had balls still he'd get an erection, and it made me laugh out loud, that bit. But then there were bits that I really didn't enjoy. So The Art of Racing in the Rain is because the owner is a racing car driver. I'm going to assume Formula 1, but I don't really know. And those bits I did not enjoy. Basically, the bits with the humans and the human story wasn't that keen on. The bits of the dog and the dog being philosophical I enjoyed a lot. Like, the actual events that the humans go through are really quite sad and really quite strange, and I'm not sure they would ever happen to a normal, like all the things happen to one normal family. But if they do, I feel very sorry for them. So whenever I was reading it, I thought of the dog as a retriever. I think that's because that's what the picture is on the front cover, and possibly what was in the trailer for it in the film, and I don't know. But then it kept going on about terriers and things like that, so I'm assuming I got the breed of dog wrong in my head. But it had a line about terriers, which is so true of Jeff, because he's a West Highland Terrier, so he's got some of the same characteristics as this dog in the book. And the line says that terriers are problem solvers. They'll do what you tell them if it's in line with what they want to do, which is so true. I mean, you could tell Jeff things, but if he doesn't want to do it, he's not going to do it. But if you say sit and he feels like sitting at that moment, he'll sit. But it can be kind of frustrating, it has to be said. But there we go. So all in all, Art of Racing in the Rain is a book that I've wanted to read for quite a while, and it was on my Kindle. Probably should have said that, but I read on my Kindle again this month, hence why I'm not by the books and showing you books. But it was, I guess, slightly disappointing. Maybe I'd overhyped it in my own head, or maybe when I read the blurb it seemed better than it was, but it was alright. It was a nice start to the month, but nothing to write home about really. It's not one I would rush out and recommend to everyone. The second book I read was Game Over by Adele Parks. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go with an author that I know I've enjoyed before. So I've read a few of Adele Parks' books in the past and really enjoyed them. And it's the kind of book that normally I find very easy to read and enjoy and all of that. But I didn't like the main character, which was a bit of a problem. She is very cold and very selfish and just not very nice, and I know that she's supposed to be cold and stuff because of her parents getting divorced and things like that. But the reaction to it seemed way too extreme, in that because her parents' marriage didn't work and her mum was left appearingly very sad, and meant that her mum didn't have any emotion for anybody, which is not necessarily true, but it meant that she shut herself off from everybody and was never going to fall in love, and was very... men were there for one night, basically. Which meant that when they introduced the love interest, she seemed to fall in love way too quickly. Like, within a split second, she was, like, besotted by this man. Which I guess can happen, but if you're that way inclined, then surely it would take a lot longer and your brain would be more anti it. I mean, she did get scared eventually, but there was a lot of time before that. So that didn't seem to fit with the character that she's supposed to be. As I said, I didn't like her, and she was really mean to her supposedly best friends, particularly the female friend Izzy, or Issy, depending on how you want to pronounce it, where she basically shut her down all the time, and that's not a friendship, is it? I don't know, maybe I'm doing the friendship thing wrong. And the way that her brain worked, I just don't get how anybody's brain would work like that. I'm sure there are people where it does, but it didn't make sense in my brain for her brain to work like that. By the end of the book, yes, she does get her comeuppance, but she does get the man. But all she gets is the man, and she loses pretty much everything else. Sorry, spoilers. Which, I don't know, it just didn't feel right. Just because I didn't like her didn't mean that I wanted her to basically lose everything. And is getting the man everything when she no longer has a job or friends, or I guess it's how you weigh things up in your mind, but I felt it was a bit extreme. The whole thing was based around this TV show concept that she came up with about people that cheat just before their wedding, essentially, and it all ties together with that. And yeah, again, it's just a book that I wasn't overly keen on. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't one that gripped me. But it is one of the only times I've wanted a book to have an epilogue, just because all of this stuff happens to her and then it ends. And I wish there was like a 6 months later where you could see whether she pulled the rest of her life back together or not. But there we go. It also seemed to have some really dated references in it to like popular culture, which made me think the book was like early 2000s, but was actually written and published in 2012. So even when it was published, those references are pretty old. So that confused me a bit too. And the last book I read in April was The Psychopath Test by John Ronson. So I have a slightly morbid fascination with this kind of stuff anyway, and we watched the documentary on Netflix, Don't F With Cats, where that man had some serious issues, and made me think, I don't know, I have a book that's about psychopaths. And when I read the blurb however many years ago, when I wrote it on my I want to read it list, sounded like the book would make you question your own brain and whether you're a psychopath and things like that. It didn't. Like, it was good and the stories were interesting, but it didn't make me question anything. And that's sort of what I was hoping for, something that would really make me think. And it didn't. But then maybe that's a good thing, because maybe my brain isn't actually there. And as I've said, very tired. About to yawn. And I probably wouldn't have been able to concentrate on it if it was that deep and made me think. There were some very, very good chapters in it and good stories. I particularly liked the one about TV shows and like the kind of person they would book for, like Jeremy Kyle. They would spoke to a TV booker and the system that they would use about being the right kind of mad. So there's obviously issues because you want to go on Jeremy Kyle, but you're not so nutty that if things went dreadfully wrong that you'd end up doing something that would reflect badly on the show. Obviously it's not a foolproof theory or test or list of tick boxes, but that was very interesting, as was the chapter about the conspiracy theorist guy whose name I've forgotten, who seems to just progress in insane theories. So he starts with the fact that the 7/7 bombings didn't exist and then ends up with him saying that he's the Messiah. Like, in general, the second half of the book was better. The first half was not... The stories weren't as interesting to me. Like, the first or second chapter was very heavily into Scientology, which I'm not really interested in. And about stories of people that I feel like I should have heard of, but I haven't. It was interesting that they tried to look at whether people in high-powered jobs, so like politicians or business leaders and stuff, whether they tend to be psychopaths, I guess, and how they rated on the checklist that Bob Hare devised. So as I said, bits of it, again, like all the books that I've read this month, bits of it I found really interesting and I enjoyed, but on the whole it didn't particularly keep me engaged. So yeah, that's the books that I read in April. Again, not the greatest. I've decided for several reasons that I'm going to go back to physical books for May, because I feel like I'm looking at a lot of screens, like I'm sure most people are, so taking the Kindle away is at least one screen less. I'm wondering whether the physical holding a book and turning the pages and stuff, whether that will help me keep engaged. And also I have a book by my favourite author, Millie Johnson, to read, and I'm intrigued to see whether that one holds my attention, because normally I devour those books really, really quickly because I get so sucked in. So, spoiler, that's coming up next month. So we're going to do that. I might reread some stuff. My brother was saying that that might be a good way, if there's books that I want to reread. But we'll see. But anyway, I'm going to head off, so if you've liked this book review, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!